Welcome back to Methodcast, your gentle corner of the world where we untangle habits, dissolve illusions, and find clarity in the quiet. I'm so glad you're here. This is the podcast that's here to help you break free from porn the easy peasy way. No guilt, no struggle, just a new perspective that makes quitting feel natural. Because real freedom isn't about giving something up, it's about gaining back everything porn has taken from you. Today we're talking about something subtle, something many people try to justify or even pride themselves on, but something that, under the surface, quietly reinforces addiction: controlled use of porn. It sounds reasonable, right? The idea that you can set limits, that you can watch porn occasionally, mindfully, in moderation, that you're not dependent, just indulgent every now and then, that you've got it under control. And for many people, this idea of controlled use becomes the gold standard, the ideal. I'll just watch once a week, they say. Just for a few minutes. Just when I'm really in the mood. But let's gently unpack that together. Controlled use starts as a plan. It's usually motivated by a desire to reduce the chaos, the shame, the guilt that comes with frequent or compulsive use. It feels like a middle ground, less drastic than quitting completely, but still a step toward responsibility. And on the surface, it works. For a little while, you feel better. You feel in charge. You feel like the master of your choices again. But then something happens, something internal and quiet. You start thinking about your next allowed session. You start planning for it, building anticipation. Your brain, having once tasted the dopamine hit of high stimulation, begins counting down. The controlled use becomes a reward, a light at the end of your day or your week. And you're no longer present in the moment. You're waiting for the next scheduled escape. This is the trap. Because you're not free. You're managing your addiction like someone managing a toxic relationship. You haven't let go. You've just tried to domesticate it. And here's what this does to your thoughts. It reinforces the belief that porn has value, that it's something you need to regulate like sugar or alcohol, that it's something worth returning to in a safe way. But that belief, that porn is desirable, keeps the neural craving alive. You're not dissolving the addiction. You're feeding it in microdoses. The Easy Peasy Method calls this the reinforcement trap. Every controlled session is like a breadcrumb that leads you back into the maze. Even if you don't spiral into binging, the act itself keeps the fantasy alive. It whispers, "This is worth craving." And each time you go along with that whisper, you deepen the groove in your brain that says, "This is who I am. This is what I want." That's where behavior starts to shift to. Users who try to control their use often find themselves thinking more about porn between sessions than they did when they were using more frequently. It becomes a mental calendar, a countdown, and that mental obsession bleeds into life. You're half there in conversations, a little restless during work, slightly less grounded with your partner. You're holding space for something that's not present but always waiting, and that affects your feelings. There's a low-grade anxiety underneath it all, a sense of managing something volatile. You might not feel shame after every session, but you probably feel unsettled, disappointed, like you're betraying a part of yourself that wants to go further, be freer, feel more aligned. You're not in crisis, but you're not at peace. Now let's talk about how this all affects your self-image. One of the most damaging parts of controlled use is that it keeps your identity tethered to porn. You're not someone who's quit. You're someone who's managing, and that management takes effort. It means you see yourself as someone who can't fully trust their own impulses, someone who needs to keep the leash tight lest they spiral. That kind of self-perception subtly erodes your confidence. Even if you don't name it out loud, your inner dialogue becomes cautious. Can I handle this? Will I go overboard again? Am I fooling myself? You stop seeing yourself as a whole, free person and start seeing yourself as someone in maintenance mode, someone incomplete. But here's what's quietly powerful about the easy peasy approach. It offers a different identity entirely. One where you're not managing your impulses because you're not bound by them. One where you don't have to resist porn because you genuinely don't want it. One where your freedom doesn't depend on streaks or timers or filters. It lives in your clarity. So how do you move from controlled use to freedom? It begins with questioning the underlying belief. Is porn really something I want? Or is it just something I've trained myself to tolerate, even romanticize? You start to get curious. You look at what it actually gives you, not what it promises, but what it delivers. The few minutes of relief, the spike of fantasy, and the hours of aftermath. the emptiness, the disconnection, the drop in energy and joy. You also begin to notice the emotional cost of keeping it under control, the vigilance, the tracking, the low-grade shame that comes with every mental negotiation. And then you ask, what if I didn't have to manage this at all? What if I could just be done? This is where mindset becomes everything. Because the non-user doesn't live in resistance, they don't control anything. They just don't want it anymore. And that's not because they're stronger. It's because they've seen through the illusion. They've realized that the idea of moderation was just a way to delay the truth. That porn was never bringing joy, never bringing connection, never bringing peace. It was just a quick fix, a sugar high, a habit wrapped in marketing. And once you see that clearly, there's no more struggle. You don't need to control it because it no longer controls you. You can wake up and not think about it. You can move through your day without managing impulses. You can feel sexual energy arise without needing to channel it into a screen. You can return to yourself, your body, your relationships, your passions. That is what's waiting for you on the other side of control. Ease, not a fight, but a letting go. Not a compromise, but a remembering. So if you're still managing your porn use, if you're living in the limbo of controlled use, know that you don't have to stay there. You don't have to tighten the reins even more. You can simply let go of the leash entirely because the thing you've been trying to control isn't a wild beast. It's an illusion. And once you see it for what it is, it dissolves. Thank you for spending this time with me on Methodcast. I hope this conversation brought a little light to the spaces in your mind that needed it most. You are not your habit. You are not your history. You are not a person in control. You are a person already free, waking up to the truth of that freedom one moment at a time. Please give this podcast a like, share the Methodcast with a friend, or leave a comment. Healing grows when we talk about it. Keep going, keep growing, and know that your freedom isn't just possible. It's already on its way. And until next time, be kind to yourself. Clarity is not far. It's already inside you, just waiting for you to trust it.